And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line from Inside the Birds, I don't want to just say podcast and sell it short, Inside the Birds Empire, Mr.
Sounds
Geoff
good to me.
Mosher.
I think you're selling us a little short, but that's okay.
World domination, Inside the Birds, Geoff Mosher.
Getting warmer.
Getting warmer? Better, closer, warmer, getting there.
I like it.
Mosh, let me ask you this. Have you ever worn a T-shirt that has Adam Kaplan's face on it? Has that ever happened?
No. Lingerie, maybe, but not a T-shirt. Is that a good start to the show?
That's how you started off, man. I appropriately compliment you. Go your partner in lingerie and not your wife, your broadcast partner. And you know what? That's cool. That's good that you're close. No, that is amazing. I don't need to buy that shirt, but if you need your Inside the Birds podcast, Inside the Birds Empire paraphernalia, I'm sure it's available at InsideTheBirds.com. All right. Nick Sirianni says today, wow, I'm going to lose sleep thinking of that image. Nick Sirianni.
My work is done here.
This is all staying in. This is not getting edited. So Nick Sirianni wears the Jalen Hurts shirt today. Like, he knows what he's doing, right? Like, he said it was just, his laundry. It was one of the clean shirts that he liked, and that's what he wore. That's got to be an endorsement of his quarterback, despite some doubters still out there, no?
I mean, of course it's an endorsement. He endorses all of his players. I imagine that his closet is sort of like, this is a very loose analogy, so I hope people don't think I'm the old show with Pee Wee Herman in it, where he would dress up in the tuxedo and the red bow tie. He would go into his closet and there would just be like 700 of those same gray suits with red bow ties, right? So I imagine Nick Sirianni, it's like the Mr. Rogers thing too. I imagine Nick Sirianni's like laundry basket gets dumped on his bed and it's just T-shirts with his players on it, like cartoon images of his players on it, because that's what he does. That's what he wears. That's his thing.
Hey, you know what? Makes sense to me. So we got a lingerie reference. We got a Pee Wee Herman reference. Well, we're just going to keep it going. We're going to keep it going, baby. So let me just say this. So day one of camp in the books. I know we make a big deal about all of this, but just where are you at? Because last time we talked to you, we're in the middle of the offseason. Now we're at the end of the offseason. Training camp has got underway. Where are you at right now in the evaluation process of Jalen Hurts?
I'm thinking Hall of Fame and wondering if he might be the greatest quarterback ever. After one practice, of course. Now,
of course, naturally.
Now, Mark, we could do a whole entire show, not that you want to, but on just even when training camp was like real, how difficult it really is to make long-term conclusions on lots of things. It's not hard to evaluate players, I think, at training camp. Obviously, the coaches do it every day. But you're evaluating certain players, like quarterback, right, under certain conditions that are not what you see in an NFL game. So if they're not in pads and they're not doing 11-on-11s and the day one is mostly 7-on-7s and there's no pass rush to distort Jalen Hurts. And, they only did red zone stuff really in team drills on first day anyway. So, I'm not going to be the guy who does that. I mean, I'm sure people will chart it and certain people will make really long-term conclusions. I don't. It's day one. They work on certain things, and training camp now is so different than the training camp when I started covering the team when it was in Lehigh, which, by the way, the older guys would tell me was so different when there were 7 preseason games and there were like 3 practices a day for 8 weeks. It was like they were telling us that the Lehigh days were soft. So now what do you think those of us who've been through Lehigh think of this training camp now? And now, look, I know there's a method to the madness, right? There's a reason, but I look and see Wednesday is the start of training camp, and Thursday is a walkthrough day, a closed to media walkthrough day. And hear Nick Sirianni say, well, that's because training camp started Tuesday with a conditioning test. And so we don't do 3 straight days of work. And I think, wow, that's really incredible. How far things have come since those days.
Gotcha. So look, bottom line is whatever we feel about Jalen Hurts, and my gut feeling going into this is that he will again be the Eagles starting quarterback next year. I think that is going to happen again. Are you close to that, or are you 100% have to wait and see what the season is? But bottom line is, what's your gut telling you going into the year?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not close to he's not, or I'm as close to he's not as I am to he is. I mean,
Mm.
because honestly, last year was his first year with not such a great team. Good team, not great, right? Even with making the playoffs, they've built around him, but they did have the flirtations with the top name quarterbacks in the offseason. They just were not able to get anybody to flirt back, kind of like me in high school. But now they've built up the team around him, but remember they've got assets for next year. So, I think that a lot of people just naturally assume, hey, they won 9 games last year, got better, they should win 10, 11, 12. And I do think they have 10 to 12 win talent, but we also know that in the NFL, it's never linear like that. It's very rare. Some teams, yes, but it doesn't just happen that way, or else the 2020 Eagles wouldn't have won 4 games. They would have won 13 or 14, right? So, and we know that's not the case. So obviously, Jalen has to be a really good quarterback this year for the Eagles to then want to, I would think, give him the money, the contract extension that you would normally give a quarterback after 3 years. So, I mean, can he do it? Yes. Does he have a good shot to do it? Yes. Am I convinced he's going to? I'm not convinced of anything of anybody. So it's not just a Jalen Hurts thing. I'm just, it's still a new coaching staff for me. Still a lot of new players. Sometimes guys have great years and then regress. Sometimes guys have bad years and come back. So we'll see.
We're talking with Geoff Mosher, of course, Inside the Birds podcast. The latest episode drops. It's probably already dropped by the time that we air this, being that you and I are recording this Wednesday night. So you and Adam Kaplan have your latest podcast out already. Look, Jalen Hurts is going to be the starting quarterback of the Eagles week 1. From now to week 1, what do you think training camp will decide? What is the hot position battle right now? Who is really going to be slugging it out on this Eagles team?
Yeah, so there are some position battles that are important, but they're not the sexiest thing in the world. Isaac Seumalo is going to come back from his injury and play right guard. I don't think he's going to be challenged much, but they do like Jack Driscoll. So we'll have to see if Jack can kind of push Seumalo out of that job. And if he does, you're probably pushing Seumalo off the team because $5.5 million is too much to pay a backup lineman. On the offense, though, I think wide receiver, that slot interior wide receiver is a really interesting scenario that features multiple people. Quez Watkins will obviously get a look there, and we'll have to see if his skill set really is meant for the slot, which is you can be a vertical slot. You can stretch the field from that like Nelson Aguilar used to do in 2017 especially. But it's also a position where you do a lot of run blocking. If you're running out of 11 personnel, that's not really his thing. Zach Pascal, big, strong guy, teacher's pet. He should get some opportunities there. Jalen Reagor, kind of elephant in the room. I mean, he's still on the team right now. He had a really good OTAs from everything we had heard, very focused, came into camp, not only as a receiver, but as a returner as well. So he's got a lot to prove this camp. Greg Ward, Britton Covey, the undrafted free agent. So there's going to be a lot of different guys in and out, and we'll just have to see who is really the best for that position.
While you mentioned Jalen Reagor, kind of one of my topics I've been kicking around this week is if whether or not he makes it to the opening day roster for the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you think he will be on the roster come week 1?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's like I know teams have called on him, and I know Howie, of course, is answering the phone, so I know discussions have been had, but the Eagles want to see him succeed. Obviously, he's a first-round pick, and they could use a bona fide slot receiver where I think Jalen could flourish. So without me knowing what somebody's willing to give up for Jalen Reagor, it's hard for me to say yes or no. I mean, if the best offer the Eagles get is, I don't know, like a 6 or a conditional 5 or something, you could see them waiting it out and hanging on for a little bit to see what they've got in camp. If somebody wants to really offer something that's of significance, I would think that the Eagles would be more prone to say, all right, we have to really consider that offer.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there any way that they cut him or release him, or do you think they still try to get what they can?
No, they will not cut him or release him. No.
Fair enough. Looking at this roster right now, I know we mentioned 2011 and the Dream Team and all that stuff, and Miles Sanders comes into this season having said all-star, it's like an all-star team, all that. Just on paper, we're only looking at paper, and of course that doesn't matter nearly as much as what Doug Peterson used to say is on the grass, right? But how talented is this team compared to other teams you have covered in the past?
It's a great question. I think it's a really deep 53. I thought the 2018 team was actually deeper and better than the 2017 roster. Obviously they didn't have great health and things didn't break their way. But you remember how deep they went on the D-line because they were deep on the D-line when they won the Super Bowl, and then they brought in Michael Bennett. Now they lost Vinny Curry, but they brought in Michael Bennett, who's a Pro Bowler, and they brought back Chris Long. So they had a lot of good players there. I think this team has really good depth. I would say they have the best 53. I think they can make an argument in the NFC East. The thing is, you only play 22 at one time. So do they have the best 22? Usually that doesn't matter. You'd rather have the best 53 because every team goes through injuries. Mm-hmm. So I do like their 53. I mean, obviously they're not – safety is a sore spot. But if you go back to 17 and 18, cornerback was a sore spot. And they still were deep and talented. But offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver to a point, some good tight end play. We'll see with Calcaterra if he can play a little bit. But linebacker – they're deeper there and more talented than they've been in 3 or 4 years. And certainly a corner to have two guys like Bradbury and Slay is pretty good. So they have good depth. I like this roster. I really do. But I always say, like, if you're comparing 53s, right, sometimes the team may not have as good of a 53, but if they've got the best head coach, best defensive coordinator, or best quarterback, they're probably going to be better than your 53, even though if they're not as superior from top to bottom.
Mm-hmm. Howie Roseman likes to make moves around this time of year in training camp, likes to make that one last move, that little adjustment, whatever it might be, sometimes big addition it turns out to be. Howie was asked about his depth at the safety position today during his press conference along with Nick Sirianni, and he said, I don't think I've ever looked at a roster and felt content. So Howie might have an itchy trade finger in the not-too-distant future here. Do you think he's done, and do you think he's still going to add a safety to this bunch?
I don't think he'll wind up adding a safety. I think it's more likely he'd wind up adding a running back, like a bigger power running back to complement Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, to kind of give you what Jordan Howard gave them last year, who, by the way, is still a free agent. Mm-hmm. And there are some other big backs there as well. So that would be the area I think that they would look to upgrade. But, I mean, as far as safety, I mean, they like Epps. I think they've said it 1,000 times. I don't think they're lying about it. And they brought in Jaquiski Tart, who, when healthy, has been a good player to compete there with Anthony Harris, although I'm sure Harris will start. They still have Kevon Wallace, got Sashere and Maiden. Like, I don't know what safety is available. And I know everybody's like, you idiot, Jesse Bates. I said available.
you moron.
Right. And remember, if you trade for Jesse Bates, I think the deadline has passed for you to be able to give him an extension. He has to play on the franchise tag. So if you bring in Jesse Bates, you got to do a whole lot of maneuvering to be able to afford him for the year. And then he's got all the leverage in the world to say, well, now you have to like resign, make me the highest paid safety, or else I'll just walk and look at all that stuff you did just to bring me in. So it's not a great position of leverage for the Eagles to try to go get Jesse Bates.
All right, fair enough. Geoff Mosher, I wish you nothing but success when it comes to recording your actual podcast later tonight at the time we tape this. And, of course, you and Adam with your T-shirts and whatever else it is you guys do on Inside the Birds Empire. I wish you nothing but, joy, my friend.
We appreciate that. Now, can we get a Marc Farzetta T-shirt? Or lingerie, either one.
Yeah, we have corsets exclusively at FarzyShow.com. Corsets galore, my friend. Enjoy yourself.
I'll take it.
The great Geoff Mosher joining us. Make sure you guys check him out, of course, not just with Inside the Birds podcast and Empire. Also, make sure you're following on social media as well, especially Twitter, where he has all the knowledge that he likes to drop right there. Mosh, thanks so much for joining us on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line, my friend.
You got it, brother. Have a good one.
You as well. Geoff Mosher joining us right there from Inside the Birds podcast.